Listen, I need every man hearing this to lean in for a second. Because marriage is not just about love, it's about readiness. And not the kind of readiness you post online or talk about with your friends. I'm talking about the kind God sees when nobody else is watching. See, when God prepares a man for marriage, he doesn't just bless him with a woman, he builds him first. The first hidden trait is discipline. Discipline is where it all begins. Before a man can ever lead a relationship, he has to learn how to lead himself. And that's not easy because self-control is something most people struggle with in silence. But a man God is preparing for marriage understands that his habits today will shape the home he builds tomorrow. He doesn't just do what feels good in the moment. He does what's right even when it's uncomfortable. See, discipline shows up in the small things first. It's how he manages his time when nobody is watching. It's whether he keeps his word, even when it costs him something. It's how he handles temptation, how he responds to frustration, and how he stays consistent when motivation fades. Because let's be real, anybody can be strong when they feel inspired, but discipline is what keeps a man steady when life gets hard. A disciplined man doesn't let his emotions control his decisions. He may feel anger, stress, or doubt, but he doesn't allow those feelings to dictate his actions. Instead, he pauses, he thinks, and he chooses wisdom over reaction. That's powerful because in a relationship, there will be moments when emotions run high. And if a man can't control himself, he can easily damage the very thing he prayed for. He also understands that discipline is tied to integrity. What he does in private matters just as much as what he shows in public. He doesn't live a double life. He's not one person in front of others and another behind closed doors. Why? Because he knows that trust is built on consistency, and without discipline, consistency is impossible. A man prepared by God is also disciplined in his growth. He doesn't stay stuck in old patterns or excuses. He works on himself mentally, emotionally, spiritually. He learns, he improves, and he makes the hard choices that most people avoid. Whether it's waking up early, cutting off distractions, or walking away from things that don't align with his purpose, he's willing to do it. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. And here's the truth, discipline is not about perfection. It's about commitment. There will be days when he falls short, when he feels tired, when he wants to give up. But instead of quitting, he resets. He gets back up. He keeps going. That consistency builds strength over time, and that strength is what makes him dependable. Because at the end of the day, a relationship requires stability. It requires someone who can be counted on, someone who doesn't fold under pressure, someone who shows up even when it's inconvenient. And that kind of man isn't built overnight. It's built through discipline. So before a man asks God for a partner, he has to ask himself a real question. Can I trust myself to lead what I'm praying for? Because if he can't control his actions, his habits, and his desires now, he won't suddenly gain that control later. But when he allows God to shape his discipline, when he commits to becoming better every single day, he becomes the kind of man who is not just ready for a relationship, but ready to lead one the right way. The second trait is accountability. Accountability is where a man stops making excuses and starts making changes. A man God is preparing for marriage doesn't waste his energy blaming people, circumstances, or his past for where he is in life. Instead, he looks in the mirror and says, if anything is going to change, it starts with me. That mindset right there is powerful because it shifts him from being a victim of life to a builder of his future. See, it's easy to point fingers. It's easy to say, they hurt me, they left me, or I didn't have the right opportunities. And while those things may be true, a man of accountability understands that staying stuck in blame will keep him stuck in life. So instead of dwelling on what went wrong, he asks, what can I do better? What can I learn from this? That's how growth begins. Accountability shows up in how he handles his mistakes. He doesn't hide them, deny them, or try to cover them up. He owns them. When he's wrong, he admits it. When he falls short, he acknowledges it. Not because it feels good, but because he knows that honesty is the foundation of real change. A man who can't be honest with himself will never be able to build something honest with someone else. And let's be real, relationships require responsibility. You can't build a healthy marriage with someone who avoids ownership. Because when challenges come, and they will, there has to be someone willing to step up, not shut down. A man with accountability doesn't run from problems, he faces them. He doesn't shift the blame onto his partner. He looks at how he can improve the situation. This kind of man also understands that accountability is tied to growth. He doesn't stay the same year after year, repeating the same mistakes and expecting different results. He evaluates himself. He reflects. He makes adjustments. Whether it's his attitude, his behavior, or his mindset, he's constantly working to become better. Why? Because he knows that who he is today will directly impact the relationship he steps into tomorrow. Accountability also means keeping your word. If he says he's going to do something, he does it. If he commits, he follows through. Because he understands that consistency builds trust, and trust is everything in a relationship. Without it, nothing else can stand. So he doesn't make empty promises. He backs his words with actions. And here's the truth. Accountability is not always comfortable. It requires humility. It requires a willingness to admit, I was wrong. But that humility is exactly what makes a man strong. Because real strength is not found in pretending to be perfect. It's found in having the courage to grow. A man God is preparing for marriage doesn't wait for someone else to fix his life. He takes responsibility for his healing, his decisions, and his direction. He understands that God will guide him, but he still has to do the work. And when he embraces that responsibility, something shifts. He becomes dependable, trustworthy, and grounded. So before he asks for a partner, he proves that he can handle responsibility on his own. Because a relationship is not about finding someone to carry your weight. It's about becoming strong enough to stand on your own and then choosing to walk alongside someone else. That's what accountability builds. And that's what makes a man truly ready. Third is emotional maturity. Emotional maturity is one of the clearest signs that a man is truly ready for something real. It's not about how loud he can speak, how dominant he can appear, or how quickly he reacts. It's about how well he understands himself and how wisely he responds to others. A man God is preparing for marriage doesn't let his emotions control him. He learns how to manage them with calmness, patience, and clarity. See, anyone can react. Anyone can get angry, shut down, or say things they don't mean in the heat of the moment. But emotional maturity is shown in the pause. It's that moment where he feels the emotion but chooses not to let it lead. Instead of reacting impulsively, he responds intentionally. He thinks before he speaks. He considers the impact of his words. Because he understands that in a relationship, one careless reaction can leave a lasting wound. A mature man knows how to communicate, and not just talk, but truly communicate. That means he expresses his thoughts clearly without disrespect. He doesn't bottle everything up until it explodes, and he doesn't avoid difficult conversations just to keep temporary peace. He addresses issues with honesty, but also with respect, because he knows that silence can create distance and harsh words can destroy connection. But communication isn't just about speaking, it's also about listening. And this is where many people fall short. A man with emotional maturity listens to understand, not just to respond. He gives his full attention. He doesn't interrupt, dismiss, or minimize the other person's feelings. Even if he disagrees, he respects the perspective being shared. That kind of listening builds trust because it makes the other person feel seen, heard, and valued. Now let's talk about conflict because every relationship will face it. Disagreements are inevitable, but how a man handles them reveals his level of maturity. An emotionally mature man doesn't turn every disagreement into a battle. He doesn't insult, manipulate, or try to win at the cost of the relationship. Instead, he focuses on resolution. He asks, how do we fix this? Instead of, how do I prove I'm right? He also knows when to step back. Sometimes the strongest move is not to keep arguing, but to take a moment, breathe, and come back with a clear mind. That's discipline and emotion. That's strength under pressure. Because losing control in a heated moment can create damage that takes a long time to repair. A man God is preparing understands that emotional maturity is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It requires self-awareness, reflection, and a willingness to grow. He learns from his past mistakes. He pays attention to his triggers. He works on becoming better, not just for himself, but for the relationship he's preparing to lead. And here's the truth, emotional maturity creates safety. It creates an environment where love can grow without fear, where conversations can happen without chaos, where both people feel secure enough to be vulnerable. That's the kind of foundation a lasting marriage is built on. So before a man asks for a partner, he has to ask himself, can I handle love without hurting it? Because love is not just about passion, it's about patience, understanding, and control. And when a man learns to communicate with wisdom, listen with intention, and handle conflict with calmness, he becomes the kind of man who doesn't just start a relationship, he sustains it. The fourth trait is vision. Vision is what separates a man who is drifting through life from a man who is building something meaningful. A man God is preparing for marriage is not just living day by day with no direction. He has a sense of purpose. He knows where he's going, or at the very least, he's actively seeking direction and taking steps toward it. Because without vision, a man becomes uncertain, and uncertainty cannot lead a stable relationship. See, vision doesn't mean he has everything figured out perfectly. It doesn't mean he has all the money, the perfect plan, or a flawless future mapped out. What it means is that he's not lost. He's not waking up every day without intention. He has goals, values, and a mindset that is focused on growth. He's building, not just existing. A man with vision understands that his life has responsibility attached to it. He knows that one day he won't just be responsible for himself, he'll be responsible for a family. And that realization changes how he moves. He becomes more intentional with his time, more careful with his decisions, and more focused on what truly matters. Because he knows that every choice he makes today is shaping the life he will offer tomorrow. Vision also gives a man discipline and direction. When you know where you're going, you stop chasing everything that distracts you. You stop wasting time on things that don't align with your purpose. A man with vision learns how to say no to distractions, to negativity, to anything that pulls him away from his calling. That's powerful because focus is rare in a world full of noise. And let's be honest, relationships require leadership, not control but direction. A woman feels secure with a man who knows where he's headed, not because she expects perfection, but because she can trust that he's not just wandering aimlessly. A man without vision creates confusion, and confusion leads to instability. But a man with vision creates clarity, and clarity builds confidence. A man God is preparing also understands that his vision is not just about personal success, it's about purpose. It's about aligning his goals with something bigger than himself. He seeks God for guidance. He asks for wisdom. He wants his life to mean something not just for him, but for the people connected to him. That kind of vision is deeper than ambition. It's driven by purpose. And here's the truth. Vision requires patience and consistency. There will be days when progress feels slow, days when things don't go as planned. But a man with vision doesn't quit. He adjusts, he learns, and he keeps moving forward because he understands that building something meaningful takes time. He also surrounds himself with things that support his vision, right environments, right habits, and right influences. He protects his focus because he knows that what he feeds his mind will shape his future. He's not easily distracted by temporary pleasures because he's committed to long-term purpose. At the end of the day, vision is about direction, focus, and purpose. It's about knowing that your life is going somewhere and being intentional about getting there. And when a man has that, he doesn't just prepare for marriage, he prepares to lead it with clarity and strength. So before he asks God for a partner, he makes sure he has a path. Because when God sends the right person into his life, she shouldn't have to wonder where he's going. She should be able to walk beside him with confidence, knowing he's building something worth being a part of. Number 5 is servant leadership. Servant leadership is one of the most powerful and misunderstood traits of a man God is preparing for marriage. The world often teaches that leadership is about control, authority, and being in charge, but God's way is different. A man who is truly ready doesn't lead by demanding respect. He leads by earning it through humility, consistency, and genuine care. See, servant leadership begins with the heart. It's the mindset that says, I'm here to give, not just to receive. This man doesn't enter a relationship asking, what can she do for me? He asks, how can I show up? How can I support? How can I add value to her life? That shift in thinking changes everything because it removes selfishness and replaces it with purpose. A man who leads this way understands that love is not proven through words alone, it's proven through actions. It's in the small, consistent things he does. It's how he shows up when she needs support. It's how he pays attention, protects her peace, and makes her feel value without being asked. He doesn't wait for recognition or praise. He serves because that's who he has become. Now don't get it twisted, servant leadership is not weakness. It doesn't mean a man allows disrespect or loses his voice. In fact, it requires strength. It takes strength to stay patient when things are difficult. It takes strength to put someone else's needs into consideration. It takes strength to lead with love instead of ego. A weak man demands control, but a strong man exercises self-control. This kind of man also understands responsibility. He knows that leadership in a relationship means being dependable. It means showing up, being present, and being consistent, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. He doesn't disappear when challenges arise. He steps forward, because leadership is not about avoiding pressure, it's about standing firm in it. Servant leadership also shows in how he communicates. He doesn't belittle, dismiss, or dominate conversations. He listens with respect, speaks with intention, and considers how his words affect the other person. He creates a safe space where both voices matter, because he knows that a strong relationship is not built on one person's control, but on mutual respect and understanding. A man God is preparing also learns the importance of sacrifice. And let's be real, every meaningful relationship requires it. Sometimes it means putting aside personal comfort for the sake of growth. Sometimes it means making decisions that benefit the relationship, not just himself. He understands that real love requires effort, patience, and a willingness to give without constantly keeping score. And here's the truth: servant leadership builds trust. It creates a foundation where a woman feels secure, valued, and respected, not because he says the right things, but because he consistently shows the right actions. Over time, that consistency speaks louder than anything else. This man doesn't try to lead through fear or control. He leads through example, through integrity, through showing what it means to love with intention and purpose. And that kind of leadership doesn't just guide a relationship, it strengthens it. So before a man asks for a partner, he learns how to serve. Because marriage is not about having power over someone, it's about taking responsibility for something greater than yourself. And when a man leads with humility, care, and a heart to give, he becomes the kind of man who doesn't just hold a relationship together, he helps it grow into something lasting and meaningful. And the sixth hidden trait is patience with God's timing. Patience with God's timing is one of the hardest traits to develop, but it's also one of the most important. A man God is preparing for marriage understands that everything in life has a season, and rushing ahead of that season can cost him more than he realizes. He doesn't allow pressure, loneliness, or outside expectations to push him into something he's not ready for. Instead, he learns how to wait, and not just wait passively, but wait with purpose. See, a lot of men struggle right here. They feel the pressure to be in a relationship, to prove something, to fill a void. And in that rush, they settle. They ignore red flags. They compromise their standards. They step into situations that feel right in the moment, but end up being wrong in the long run. But a man who trusts God's timing understands that just because something is available doesn't mean it's meant for him. Patience teaches him discernment. It helps him slow down and truly see what's in front of him. Instead of chasing every opportunity, he becomes selective. He prays, he reflects, and he listens. Because he knows that a rushed decision can create unnecessary pain, but a patient one can lead to something lasting and meaningful. This kind of man also understands that waiting is not wasting. While he's waiting, he's growing. He's working on himself, his mindset, his character, his purpose. He's healing from past experiences, learning from past mistakes, and becoming stronger in areas where he once struggled. Because he knows that God is not just preparing a partner for him, God is preparing him for the partner. Patience also builds emotional strength. It teaches him how to be alone without feeling empty. That's powerful, because if a man can't find peace on his own, he'll look for someone else to complete him. And that creates an unhealthy foundation. But a man who has learned patience walks into a relationship whole, not broken or desperate. He's not looking for someone to fix his life. He's looking for someone to share it with. And let's be real, God's timing doesn't always match our expectations. There will be moments when he feels ready, but nothing seems to be happening. Moments when he wonders, why not now? But instead of becoming frustrated, he chooses to trust. He understands that God sees what he can't see. That delays are not denials, they are protection and preparation. A man with patience doesn't compare his journey to others. He's not looking at who got married first or who seems ahead. He stays focused on his own path because he knows that comparison can lead to rushed decisions. and rushed decisions often lead to regret, this man also learns to recognize the difference between loneliness and readiness. Just because he feels alone doesn't mean he's ready for a relationship. And just because an opportunity appears doesn't mean it's the right one. That awareness keeps him grounded and protects him from making emotional decisions that could have long-term consequences. At the end of the day, patience with God's timing is about trust. It's about believing that what's meant for you will come at the right time, not just the convenient time. And when a man truly embraces that he moves differently, he's calm, he's focused, he's not chasing, he's preparing. So before he steps into a relationship, he learns how to wait the right way. Because when God's timing and his readiness finally align, what enters his life won't be forced, rushed, or temporary. It will be right. And that's worth every moment of patience. Now listen closely. Marriage is not about finding the perfect person. It's about becoming the man God is prepared to lead and love with purpose. Discipline, accountability, emotional maturity, vision, servant leadership, and patience with God's timing, these 6 traits aren't optional. They are the foundation of a man ready for a real, lasting relationship. A man who develops these qualities doesn't chase love out of desperation, doesn't react out of emotion, and doesn't settle for what's convenient. He walks with intention, integrity, and faith, trusting that God's plan is perfect. If you see these traits growing in your life, that's God shaping you for the blessing ahead. And if you haven't yet embraced them, it's time to get to work, because the right woman, the right marriage, and the life you've been praying for will only meet the man who has been prepared by God. Stand ready. Act now.